More on this now and bring in Richard Heydarian in Manila. He's a professor of political science at De La Salle University. Very good to have you with us on Aljazeera. So why do you think we are seeing this fighting now between Maute and possibly Abu Sayyaf and the Philippines military? Why now?
Well, I think the best explanation for that is a combination of two factors. First of all, this could be a revenge operation against the failed raid on Isnilon Hapilon by the Philippine army on Tuesday. And then, of course, the second factor is that this attack or this siege on Marawi City took place when President Rodrigo Duterte and the bulk of his cabinet, including his national security advisor, Mr. Esperon, were thousands of miles away in Moscow. So I think they were emboldened by the fact that much of the national security leadership was not in the country. So the revenge operation for them, the perfect timing was just when Duterte was not in the country. And now, of course, what we see also here is the fact that this Maute group, which is one of the lesser-known ISIS affiliate groups in the country, is using this operation and attacks to actually also establish its bona fide. Because so far, the more known ISIS affiliate groups are groups like Abu Sayyaf or Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters.
It's a situation serious enough that saw President Duterte cancel the trip that he was on in Moscow and return to the Philippines. It's also a situation that is starting to resemble the 2013 standoff between the armed group, between the government and armed Islamist groups, isn't it, Mr. Heydarian? That operation took more than 2 weeks. Were there any lessons learned from then?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is that after the Zamboanga siege in 2013, when it took more than 2 weeks for the government and massive bombardment of the people who laid siege on the city, it took a long time for the government to take it back. There was a resuscitation of the peace negotiations between the Philippine government and the major Muslim insurgency groups, especially the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. But in the past 2 years, the peace negotiations have been in hibernation mode. And President Duterte, who comes from Mindanao, he's the first Filipino president from Mindanao, strangely has not prioritized the peace negotiations in Mindanao because of his almost obsessive focus with the war on drugs, which he has been waging for the past 10 months or so. So I think partly we're also paying the price of not focusing enough on the peace process. But to be fair to President Duterte, this is also a reflection of the fact that as the ISIL command, as Daesh gets defeated in Mosul and Raqqa and across the Middle East, they're now trying to expand their franchise around the world. And you have affiliate groups like Maute Group or groups like Abu Sayyaf who are trying to leverage the ISIL brand to also gain ground for their own domestic political calculations.
Well, martial law has been imposed in Mindanao now in response, with talks of imposing it across the country. I mean, is that the answer?
Well, I mean, definitely Duterte's rhetoric doesn't help, right? I mean, before he returned from Moscow, he said, I'm going to make it just look like the time of Marcos dictatorship. I'm going to be harsh. And then when he returned to Manila, he said, oh, I'm going to extend it well beyond Mindanao if it's necessary. My reading is that possibly the government declared the martial law across Mindanao because there might have been some credible intelligence to suggest that the ISIS affiliate groups were planning coordinated attacks across the Mindanao. So the government had to take some preemptive measure. Nonetheless, if you look at the operationalization of the martial law, the guidelines that were released by the Philippine Department of National Defense and the military has made it clear that this will not be any way near to the kind of martial law the Philippines experienced during Marcos' time, that the basic civil liberties and constitutional rights of the citizens will be broadly respected. So it will be a very minimalist interpretation of a very maximalist legal measure that was adopted by President Duterte. Still, per constitution, he has to justify this. He has to provide, quote-unquote, sufficient facts to show why martial law, why not less draconian measures such as declaring a state of emergency or lawlessness.
Richard Heydarian joining us from Manila there. Great to get your thoughts. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.